In November, I posted a series of videos called Dow 11,000, A Manic Depressive Man. Apparently, I was a little early and 1,000 points shy. I should have maybe been called Dow 12,000, A Manic Depressive Man. But the general idea that I was presenting, we're seeing play out at the current juncture in a little different form than I had expected. Last week, the Dow Jones Industrial Average closed below 12,000 on Thursday. That evening, magnitude 9.0 earthquake struck off of Japan's coast, followed by a tsunami that caused catastrophic damage to the Japanese island. And following day, the Dow broke back above 12,000, closed above 12,000. The extent of the damage, including potential economic impact, started to become more clear over the weekend. And Monday morning, the Nikkei Japanese index opened, proceeded to plunge below the psychologically important 10,000 mark in that index. And then today, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, yesterday, it's now 2 in the morning, fell again and closed below 12,000. And so tonight, the Nikkei opened down an additional 600 points into the lunch break, closing below 9,000 just before lunch. Then during the lunch break, the third of 4 reactors blew up at the Fukushima nuclear power plant, this time releasing radiation, and given the southerly wind, this was spreading towards the south. So now Japan's in a nuclear emergency. They've been evacuating people all day over there and have people shelter in place. So after lunch, Nikkei fell another 600 points, and clearly we're in the midst of an emerging meltdown, not just in nuclear reactors, but more importantly, I believe, ultimately, is we're seeing a meltdown in mass mood. This meltdown, which is centered on Japan right now, it's starting to spread in other financial markets, but you see it manifest in financial markets, but that's just a barometer, if you will, for mass psychology, a barometer for collective sentiment. And what I've been trying to explain is a theory of reality that is critical to understand if you want to know where the world is going, where history is going. Interestingly, the mass mood in financial markets had peaked, at least in the U.S. case, on February 18th of this year, with a full moon and relatively tight 6-planet alignment. This occurred in the wake of, on February 11th, what was considered the beginning of the universal cycle according to the Mayan calendar. Now, I don't know how the Mayans had figured everything out that they figured out, but I'll cite another example with regard to the Mayans, and that was the harmonic convergence in August of 1987, which was a planetary alignment, and with the I believe the new moon in late August, the stock market peaked and mass mood peaked, followed by the 1987 stock market crash. And so we're seeing the same sort of phenomenon here, where we're peaking into this point of astronomical significance and significance to Mayan culture, and reversing course. Now, one of the theories I use, called the Elliott wave principle, points out that we've been in the midst of what's called the grand supercycle peak, some 200 years, if not at least 1,000 years in making, based upon price patterns in both the stock market as well as commodity prices and prices in general. And this this peak in prices is a peak in mass mood. Prices are just a barometer, again, for collective sentiment. And according to the Elliott wave principle, which is based upon fractals, which are cycles within cycles within cycles, what's about to unfold is one of the most massive bear markets in stocks, or if you will, declines in mass mood, crashes in collective sentiment that ever occurred in human history. The projection by Robert Prechter, the Elliott wave theorist, is for the Dow Jones Industrial Average to plunge below the 1,000 mark in the coming months and years, relatively short order in a historical context. In other words, a 90% plus drop in stock prices, and it was in my communications with Prechter and understanding the Elliott wave principle, I began to say, well, what could possibly cause that sort of massive cataclysmic collapse in mass mood? And that's when I had my apocalyptic vision, which began with a chemical scud attack on Israel, and I foresaw a future nuclear war. But that aside, as we've reached the current peak, which according to Elliott wave principle is primary wave 2 peak before primary wave 3 down in the context of the grand supercycle bear market, which just means a very, very dramatic and sharp decline in stock prices, implying a very, very dramatic and sharp decline in mass mood. Some sort of huge historical events are going to upset mass expectations. As I've been pointing out, we tend to see these historical shocks occur subsequent to reversals below psychologically important 1,000 marks, hence Dow 11,000 or Dow 12,000. And with this reversal from Dow 12,000, it's literally taking the form of the tsunami and earthquake in Japan, and again with today, a nuclear crisis. What I think is critical to understand is this is some sort of manifestation of wave-particle duality on a human level. Why do I say that? Wave-particle duality comes from quantum physics, and the notion is that you have a deterministic wave function that when you measure it, when you measure the wave field, it will manifest in a probabilistic fashion. Well, our perceptions, eyes, ears, all we are as creatures is we're measuring devices. So we measure the world we're in, which I'm saying this whole universe, and this is called the holographic universe theory, is a wave field, a deterministic wave pattern that when we experience it manifests as probabilistic particulars. In a more simple sense, or in a religious sense, I believe what this means is, I've been saying that this is all sort of establishing that God authors history. It might be more correct to say that God has authored history. History is already written. And as creatures, what we do is we are experiencing the story that's already written. In a collective sense, in terms of those wave patterns in financial markets, deterministic wave patterns, these are measurements of the collective emotional response to the story as it unfolds. So the when the Nikkei breaks below 10,000 with the earthquake and tsunami, and then 9,000 with regard to a nuclear crisis, this is the collective emotional response of the Japanese people to the events that are unfolding, that in essence may have already been written. And I know this is difficult to fathom, but bear in mind, my prophetic vision was connected with the book of Revelation in the Bible, biblical prophecy. Prophecy cannot exist unless, in some sense, history was already written. And, I mean, because you can have an author to a book who might opt to foreshadow to characters during the story future chapters that have not yet unfolded. The characters in the story have no way of seeing the future chapters, but the author can see the future chapters. And that's what I think is what Bible prophecy or ancient prophecies are all about, is this foreshadowing of the future in a book that's already written. And the wave patterns are, if you will, the schemata of the emotional responses to this story that's unfolding, that within which we exist. I'm not really explaining myself well, but I think you get the general idea. The thing that drives me crazy is why other people don't understand what I'm getting at. And if you want to know more, go to my blog, spiritofTruthblog.com, and hopefully that'll get you closer to the truth.